Are we going to see any impact?
Well, the main impact is going to be our energy bills will go up £500 in October instead of going up by £1,500. That is still at a stage where many people are in fuel poverty already. This doesn't by any means solve a problem. It's better than £1,500, but many people are still going to be in desperate problems come the autumn.
I thought the price cap in October was under 2,000.
No, the plan was to be. It was likely to go, if I get my figures right, from 2,000 to 3,500. It's now likely to go from 2,000 to 2,500. So that's there was going to be a 1,500 increase. It's now going to be a 500 increase.
So everybody's being helped, but it's still going to be, it's still a huge rise in our bills, isn't it?
Yes, always the debate has been, do you target the help to those who need it most? And there are advantages in high energy prices. People like me who can afford energy bills, fortunately, will take energy efficiency more seriously if I'm having to pay more.
I think we all are, aren't we?
Yeah, indeed. So, and you've been talking about air fryers and the like, we all start to treat energy with the respect it deserves, and that's clearly a good thing. And you do need money in the system at some point in the whole economic cycle where new investment comes in, which then ultimately brings prices down because it increases supply. So my own view is that a kind of peppergun approach to this, rather than targeting it towards those who need the help, but allowing the price mechanism to do almost what it's there for, which is to tell people now's the time to invest, and that's what will help in the long term. I'm not convinced that that's the best approach.
Right. Oh,
what about fracking?
That's a bit depressing.
Yeah, can I ask about fracking? Because obviously there were a lot of people very cynical and upset and worried about fracking. I just wonder if now Liz Truss has said she's sort of lifting the ban on it, whether there will be more of a consensus in support of fracking, because we have all come to realise that energy security is so very vital.
Well, what we don't really know yet is the scope, just how much gas is down there that we could practically get at. We do know that the UK geology is a lot more complex than that in the States, where fracking has been an absolute revolution over the last decade. And, of course, we don't have the vast open areas where nobody lives, where it's not as politically challenging here. Certainly, it seems to me to make obvious sense. We're always going to need gas, or for the foreseeable future, to deal with the time when the wind isn't blowing or overnight when there's no solar power, and for our central heating and things of that nature, cooking. And the more of that gas we can source nationally here, the less dependent we are on imports, which is clearly a good thing. But I'm far from convinced that fracking is actually going to be the game changer that some people say it is.
Would it help in the short term?
Well, not in the short term, because you need to do quite a lot of work to find out where the gas is and whether it's available. So there's a lot of boreholes need doing.
Haven't Quadrilla done that in the northwest already?
They've done some of that, but not for 3 years or so. And the programme, I think it was suspended in 2019. And even so, it hadn't got terribly far by then. Right. So there's some extra work. Then you've actually got to deal with the planning issues, and you've got to get the equipment in place.
Would it actually make the bills cheaper, though? I mean, if we're sourcing our own gas, I don't know how the market economy works with that.
It would depend. It would be possible through the licensings that you offered to put a condition on the producers that they had to sell the gas within the domestic market. That would reduce the price they could get. Otherwise, there'd be no point. If you could import gas more cheaply, then there'd be no point in doing that. So that would be an economic price to pay for that, but that would probably be just about possible. What you need to be careful then is that other countries don't do the same thing and say, OK, we're going to put limits on our exports to you. Because even with where we are at the moment, we only make just under half of our own gas. We import just over half of it. And nobody can see fracking making the difference of that more than half. It might push us over the 50%, one side or the other. But we're still going to be importing a very, very considerable amount of our gas.
What about wind and solar power? I mean, we have a lot of wind, and we definitely have our fair share of sunlight. Is the problem storage?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, what should we be doing about that?
Well, there are various technical possibilities. You can use spare electricity to pump water uphill and then use it as hydropower. And we've got a big station in North Wales called Dinorwig that's been doing that for decades.
Well, it's pumping water uphill so that it can get the hydropower of it falling back?
That's right. Because you can't store... Electricity is a process. It's not a stuff. So you can't put it in barrels. You need to use it to produce something that you can put in barrels, or you can store, and then get the electricity back out when you need it. Another option is hydrogen. You can use spare electricity to produce the gas hydrogen, which you can then burn or use in other ways for power.
Which is clean.
It is indeed. And batteries, which are being looked at, so general, more, when I say traditional batteries, they're not. They're new techs, but the concept is the same.
Can you build enormous batteries?
Well, that's the question at the moment. There are some very, very big ones appearing around the world, but the amount you would need, one of the reasons that energy prices have been high recently, we have had very low wind speeds, really over most of the last year, and that has meant that we've had to use more gas for electricity, which has pushed the price up further. With batteries, it's not just a matter of having enough power, but you've also got to have enough energy in them to deal with long periods without wind. And the amounts you need for that are huge. And we shouldn't ignore the fact the environmental consequences of all the stuff that you need to make these batteries are very, very considerable.
Yes, they're not very eco things, batteries.
See, this is the thing. What we think of as being eco is that, mind you, in terms of the technology developing, it is people like Elon Musk, isn't it? I mean, because obviously he's pushed Tesla and all the rest of it, and it's private companies like that force a lot of change, isn't it?
Yeah, this is why I've always been sceptical about this idea we should just nationalise all the industries. States generally are not as innovative as companies in competition. And it's not, some states have made great innovations, but an awful lot of technical innovation has come through market forces and through companies being able to make a profit out of that. And one of the dangers of taking all the money away from them when they do start making a profit is that you push down that innovative impetus to outdo your competitors. What's the point if the government's going to take the money away from you anyway?
So that's windfall tax.
Yeah.
Which is controversial. I mean, Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, yesterday was saying, why are we borrowing so much money, which is potentially dangerous for the economy, when we could be paying for 50% of this with windfall taxes. But you're saying it's not as simple as that.
No, I mean, I think that the budget yesterday did not reverse Rishi Sunak's moves that in effect introduced a 7 billion windfall tax this year and 10 billion over the next 2 years. It wasn't called a windfall tax for political reasons, but in effect it was altering the licence conditions for the North Sea. So there was a higher tax on the companies for the amount of oil and gas they were producing. So if I'm right in that, I've gone through it a couple of times, I can't see anything to suggest otherwise, then in effect we probably are seeing 20 or 30 billion of this over the next 3 years, as opposed to 60 billion in 6 months. It's not a game changer. But we should bear in mind some of the figures that were going around of the oil industry making 170 billion profit. That's the global industry, this windfall thing. A relatively small proportion of that is North Sea. And one of the problems is that it's not the suppliers. They're all going bust. Your report said they need extra support. It's the producers who are making a lot of money at the moment.
Producers of energy.
Yeah, and many of those are not British companies. They don't have British arms.
Do you sense there's clearly a change in the general chatter? We all know what the term energy security means now. Do you sense a change in the political thinking as well, that it is sort of almost number one priority, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, for some of us, for decades, have been saying...
You must have been rattling on about it for years.
Yeah. It's all very well when you've got a nice, apparently stable international situation with a lot of new gas being discovered, which we had through the 80s and 90s. And gas was cheap. It helped environmentally because it was much cleaner than coal. But we lost sight, I think, of the long-term issues. And when you get... The world has, in a sense, been unlucky in the last year with the post-COVID bounce, meaning that demand went up quicker than supply could keep up with it. Low wind speeds, as I say, a rather cold winter last year, and then, of course, the tragedy of Ukraine, all happening on top of each other. But we didn't build in the resilience into the system that could deal with... We'd be facing problems with all those happening at once, whatever we'd done. But we've left ourselves very vulnerable to a collection of circumstances all happening at once. Now, having said that, the oil price was $130 a barrel 6 months ago. It was $90 overnight. Still high by standards there. The gas price, which usually hovers around $2 to $4 per million BTUs, reached 10 over the last 2 weeks. It's now down at 7. And there is talk of a world recession. So it is possible that we're not going to see the extremely high wholesale prices. Too early to be sure of that, but there are some straws in the wind there that maybe the absolute price peak is over.
Oh, let's keep our fingers crossed.
At least.